What's going on, everyone? It's Ben from YGO from Zero back with another Retro Yu-Gi-Oh video, and this is going to be a pretty exciting one, as it will be the first video on my channel featuring Yata format gameplay. Now, if you missed my guide to Yata format that I released the other day, definitely check that out. I think it's a pretty good overview of the whole format and what sort of decks are, you're likely to see in a given event. But at the end of that video, I featured off two just deck lists that had topped past format tournaments. So this is one of them. This is Ellie Tin Can's hand control list, and I think it's a pretty slick list. It's got those Dawn Zalugs that are new to the deck in this format. It's got the Spirit Reaper as well. It's got Ring of Destruction, which is a very powerful new card as well. And it's also got Mirage of Nightmare, which is a very iconic card from this format. And I don't necessarily agree with everything in this list. I think that, there are some changes that I might potentially make to the deck if I was testing it out further. But I figure, like, whenever you start a new format, it's always good to start off with some of the lists that have done well in the past, just to see how you like them, see how they play. So I played some games with this list, and I also played some games with the other example deck list that I featured in that guide video, which is Gearfried, which I'll show off later in this video. But I figured that would be a great place to start, just with this format as a whole, before I actually put my own spins on these style of decks. So let's just go through a quick card by card here. Of course, I won't be able to give like the in-depth reason for a lot of these things, given that this is Ellie Tin Can's list. And so, they probably were thinking of some other stuff when they put this together that I might not know. But, I do think that this is a pretty good list as a whole. And most of the choices here are somewhat self-explanatory. So first off, you got double Dawn Zalug here to get, discarding more, and you've got the double Reinforcement of the Army to pair with those Dawn Zalug. Also, the Exiled Force here can be searched off Reinforcement of the Army as well, which is very nice. You got Fiber Jar, Injection Fairy Lily, Jinzo. Double Magician of Faith. This is a card that I think a lot of people were like cutting out of their decks in Fiber format, but it looks like it's seeing a resurgence here, so maybe this should be played more in Fiber format as well. But this is a very good card, so I understand why there are a lot of spells in this format that you'd want to get back. We've also got Triple Mystic Tomato, which can be very good at fetching out other Mystic Tomatoes, a Sangan, a Witch, a Dawn Zalug, or a Spirit Reaper, so Mystic Tomato has gotten a lot more powerful in this format. You've got Sangan and Witch to search out pretty much any other monster in your deck. You got Sinister Serpent here, pairs well with Graceful Charity, Mirage of Nightmare. There are a lot of things that this goes well with, and it's just a recurable body. It can help you sort of break out of the Yata Lock as well, so it's not the worst thing in the world. We've also got Spirit Reaper, which I mentioned before, can't be destroyed by battle, and also can rip a card out of hand if your opponent doesn't have any monsters. And lastly, we've got a Yata Grasu, which gives the format its name. You can often pull off the Yata Lock in this format pretty easily, given that there are a lot of cards that help deprive your opponent of resources, like Dawn Zalug and Spirit Reaper. So Yata is a pretty great card in this format. You can search it off of Sangan and Witch as well, and just lock your opponent out of the game. For the spells, pretty straightforward here. Confiscation, Darkhold, Linkwind Duo, Graceful Charity, Harpy's Feather Duster, Mirage of Nightmare here. Very, very good card. Hopefully we'll get to see it off in the games. Monster Reborn, Triple MST. This pairs well with Mirage of Nightmare and just, any other card that your opponent might have that's pretty problematic. We've got a Nobleman of Crossout here. Honestly, unsure about this card in the main deck. But I guess, if you're expecting a lot of like set monsters, this can be very good. One thing I've noticed in past formats is that oftentimes a main deck Nobleman can get punished by a lot of things. If your opponent just brings out monsters and attacks in, then Nobleman doesn't get you out of bad situations like that. But this can be very good, especially given the powerful flips in this format like Fiber Jar. We've also got a Painful Choice, a Pot of Greed, Raigeki, double Reinforcement of the Army, as I mentioned earlier, and a Forceful Sentry. For the traps, we've got Call of the Haunted, Imperial Order, Mirror Force, Ring of Destruction, insanely strong card, and triple Torrential Tribute. Now, these Torrential Tributes can be great at stopping the Yata Lock, but it can also be great at clearing the way for you to attack in with things like Dawn Zalug, Spirit Reaper, or Yata Grasu. So it's a card that does a lot of double duty in this deck. The side deck I'm kind of perplexed by. There's a lot of things here that I don't quite get. Bazoo, Cyber Jar, Dice Jar. I think this is for the meme more than anything. Double Marauding Captain. I guess they can set up a Captain lock. Morphing Jar, double Morphing Jar number 2. 2 Gemini Elf. A Change of Heart in the side and not in the main. That's kind of interesting. I think, honestly, I might put this in over the Nobleman if I was making this deck. But again, I'm not privy to, every sort of idea that Ellie Tin Can had going into this. So the Nobleman could definitely be correct over the change. Just this card is so powerful. There's also a Heavy Storm here for more back row focused decks. Premature Burial, a Snatch Steal, and a Trap Dust Shoot. Likely for if you're going first, you can bring this in as another form of hand disruption. And that's going to do it for the deck. I think this deck is really clean. Again, there are some things that I'd probably change about it personally, but that's why you test out these decks when you first dive into the format to see if, your initial intuitions about these things are right or wrong. But without further ado, let's dive into the games that I played with this deck and see how it actually does. Okay, we've got a game here against Soul65. We're playing LA Tin Can's hand control deck. Unclear what they're playing, but we'll find out. Hopefully it'll be something spicy. Soul is an active member of the YGO from Zero Discord, which is a great place to find games in this format and any others that I featured on this channel. And we'll also be holding a Yata tournament in that Discord this Saturday. We'll also be holding a smaller tournament the night before, which will just serve to sort of help people test out their decks. But it should be a lot of fun. So if that sounds like something that interests you, then definitely head on over to the Discord server. Links in the description down below. But anyways, our opponent's going to open up with a Delinquent Duo that is kind of rough, but there are some cards that we don't necessarily care about them hitting. TT is kind of a rough one. We would have liked to keep that, but not the worst. We're going to actually think about what to do here. And I think, honestly, we might send the Tomato. Because Graceful's just so good. We've got Reborn to bring back Tomato if we really need it. And also, we want to, a good first turn move from them could be to just set a monster and pass. And Nobleman into that is really good. So I think I will just send this Mystic Tomato, pass back to them. It's kind of awkward because we have no monsters in hand now. But hopefully Graceful can draw us into some. They're just going to set 3, activate Mirage of Nightmare, and pass. And that's a little bit unfortunate. Luckily, in draw phase, we do draw into a Mystical Space Typhoon, so we're just going to use that in draw phase and pop that Mirage of Nightmare, because we do not want that to get its effect off and have them draw a bunch of cards here. So we're just going to pop that. That will go through. And then we're going to fire a Graceful Charity here. Drawing 3, and we're going to discard the Knock, given that they don't have a monster. We're actually going to also discard this Delinquent Duo, given that they've only got 1 card in hand. We're going to go for a painful choice here, and we're going to send Confiscation, Forceful Sentry, a Yata, which would be really good on this board, and a pair of Don's Lugs just to get in. It's a good monster to knock a card out of their hand. We've got Ring of Destruction to pop whatever they bring out to get over it, so I feel like this is a pretty good situation to be in. But they're going to give us this Don's Lugs, so we'll take that. And, if they hadn't, we could have always reborned it with the Monster Reborn. But we're going to hit in for 1,400. They do have Book of Moon to stop that from going through. Quite unfortunate. We're going to set this ring, pass back to them. And let's see what they do. They've got a Gravekeepers Assailant, revealing that they likely are on Gravekeepers here. They're going to fire a Raigeki to clear the Don's Loop, get in for 1,500. We will just let that go through. We could have ringed it, but I feel like we don't need to do that yet. Unfortunately, this Torrential Tribute will be kind of rough here. So maybe we should have just ringed it. We are just going to target the Gravekeeper's Assailant, ring it now. Kind of unfortunate because now we're 1,500 down when we might not have otherwise been. Maybe given that we've got the Reborn in hand, we should have just ringed it last turn, Reborn this turn to bring out Zalug or something. But yeah, we are going to fire the Reborn now. This may seem really weird because it's like you want to save Reborn for when you have a really good play with it. However, they're on Gravekeepers, and Necro Valley is a thing that can shut off Reborn, so we want to use it now before they actually draw into Necro Valley. We're going to bring out this Tomato, given that they don't actually have any cards in hand. We could get milling with the Zalug, but I don't really think that's as worth it. They're going to go for a Rite of Spirit here, bring back the Gravekeeper's Assailant here, and main two, we're just going to set this Torrential Tribute, pass back to them. They've got the MST for the Torrential, which is quite unfortunate, but we can float into something with Tomato, so that's nice. They're just going to set one, and we're just going to switch that Tomato defense, pass back to them. Maybe we should have set the other Tomato, given that they've used up Raigeki already. I think I'm afraid of Dark Hole, but if they draw Dark Hole off the top, then it's not the worst thing in the world for them to Dark Hole that board. They've got Terraforming, though, and that will be able to get them a copy of Necro Valley here. They're going to fire that Necro Valley, buff up that Gravekeeper's Assailant, and fire a ring on our Tomato. That is really unfortunate, given that Assailant has 2,000 attack. So they're going to hit in for 2,000 here. And they're just going to pass back to us. We draw Magician of Faith, which is useless against Necro Valley. However, I made some major misplays in these games, and you'll soon see one of them. But yeah, I mean, that happens in these games. Like, I will misplay, especially when it's the first game of format, but some of the misplays in these games were just brutal. So, yeah, I'm going to set this Magician of Faith, switch the Witch to defense, and pass back to them. I shouldn't have honestly set the Magician, I think, here. I mean, maybe I should have just had a chump blocker, but yeah, it's kind of risky. They're just going to switch the Assailant to defense, set one, pass back to us. And here I make the biggest misplay of the game. And this, honestly, I think cost me the game. I check my graveyard, see what I've got, and I flip up Magician of Faith because I forget that Necro Valley prevents Magician of Faith from going off. And that's, I mean, there's really no excuse for this misplay. I just had a major brain fart, and I'm not used to playing against Necro Valley, so yeah. But it's better not to give excuses and just learn for the future. So now, against Necro Valley in the future, I won't be making this misplay, but that's really bad because we're at such low life points that a Gravekeepers Assailant over the Magician of Faith will just kill us here. And yeah, that's really, really bad for us. That does, I think, cost us this game here. They're going to hit him with the Assailant. We just have to Mirror Force that or else we lose. But if they have any other way to get back to that Assailant, we just lose the game anyways. So we're going to bring out this Exiled Force, tribute it off for the guard there. And that's a pretty good trade. However, this is really bad. We're going to try and bait them into a Mirror Force by attacking in with Witch with a Magician of Faith and attack. They're just going to take it, though. We switch the Magician of Faith to defense, pass back to them. If they have any way to get to Assailant, we just lose the game. They've got Graceful. That should probably find them a way to get into Assailant. And it looks like they're just going to set. I mean, that could easily be a Rite of Spirit here. So that'll be really bad for us. We are just going to set this Torrential. They've got Rite of Spirit, though, in the end phase, so we can't Torrential that. And yeah, that will be the end of the game. I think, honestly, if we hadn't made this misplay, we could have been in a good position here. Because if they ever did bring out another monster, we could Torrential it, and or we might not have even done that just to sort of, not leave ourselves open to a Rite of Spirit here. We would have gotten a search off of the Witch, and I don't know. I think that it's definitely up in the air, unclear who would have actually won this game, but I really do think that this misplay cost us the game here, and we could have potentially won this otherwise. So yep, they're just gonna hit in to the Magician, and that will be the end of the game. So. Again, it's my first time playing in this format with these decks. That doesn't really excuse the misplays, but I mean, it is something to keep in mind in future games that I'll learn from. I need to really tighten up my technical play in this format, and so hopefully the future videos that I show off with these sorts of decks, my technical play will be a little bit better, and hopefully I won't lose to things like that. So we go into game 2 here, and let's see how we do here. We are going to open with a fairly good hand, and we're going to, I mean, Fiber Jar in the opener actually gives us another potential option. So I was thinking initially just, setting a Sangan or Witch, setting Torrential, and like passing, but we could just set Fiber Jar and try and bait them into normal summoning, resetting the board, and then getting a pretty advantageous hand that way. But I mean, I don't know. I feel like it's fine just to set Sangan, set MST, set Torrential. If they do summon a monster, we can Torrential that, bring out like a Don Zalug after, hit in, or just a Reaper. A Reaper might honestly be better in that situation. But yeah, we're just going to flip up this Sangan, Torrential the board. It was a guard, so worked out for us. We are just going to grab a Zalug here. Maybe a bit of a mistake. Maybe we should have gone for Spirit Reaper instead, as, that can't be destroyed. It also can't let them Tomato Crash. But we do have Torrential Tribute to protect the Zalug, or not protect the Zalug, but protect ourselves if they do have a Mystic Tomato. We're just going to hit in. We hit a Gravekeeper Spear Soldier here. We'll set a Torrential Tribute, pass back to them. And let's see what they do. They're just going to set 2, pass back to us. It's very likely that that is a spy or something, but we've got reinforcement in the army anyways, so we can grab an Exiled Force here, pop their monster, and then, yeah, we're just going to fire a Harpy Feather Duster now, just to clear their background in case it's like Torrential Tribute or something. It's a Rite of Spirit, so, I mean, honestly good that we got this out of the way now, because they will bring back their Gravekeeper Spear Soldier. We're just going to bring out the Exiled Force anyways, pop the set, just because if it is a spy, that would be bad for us, and it is indeed the spy. And now we can just switch our Zalug to defense and wall up behind it. If they ever do bring out a monster to attack over the Zalug, we can just Torrential. They're just going to set 2, pass back to us. We draw Yata, not really useful right now. We'll set this Witch, pass back to them, and let's see what they do. They are going to flip up the spy and bring out another monster here. I don't think this will, yeah, I mean, they don't really have any monsters that can hit over Zalug. They might have a Necro Valley, but we've got MST for that, so I don't really care too much about that. And here's the other major misplay I make here. They bring out Wangu, and this would be the perfect time to Torrential. This Torrential is really good, wipes out like their entire board, and also we do, have the Witch here to search. So I think that this is a prime target to Torrential. I just don't, I don't know why. There's no real reason not to. This lets them get in for a lot of damage here. And what am I saving the Torrential for? Next turn, my play is to set Fiber Jar. They're not going to commit more to board here. And yeah, there's no real reason to do this. So I think this is a really bad play on my part. This is yeah, this is just awful. I should have just torrentialed that, and that could honestly cost me the game here. So again, I mean, I apologize for these misplays. Yeah, I mean, it's my first game in the format, but that doesn't really excuse these misplays, as these aren't necessarily unique to cards in Pharaonic Guardian. So it's just bad play on my part. They're going to attack into the Fiber Jar that we set there, and I mean, we really need to just reset the game. And yeah, so I mean, they will get to normal summon or set here, which is quite unfortunate for us. It's obviously not the most advantageous Fiber Jar, but it is something that we just had to do here because we really blew it. They are going to shuffle everything back as well. And the Gravekeeper's Spear Soldier does pierce over the Fiber Jar, so we're taking more damage on top of that. So it's just really rough. And if they do have hand rips here, then, you know, we're in a really bad situation anyways as well. So it's just really tough here. Luckily, the hand we drew was pretty good. But they're just going to set 5 and pass. I mean, if we draw into something good here, that'll be pretty nice. We're going to start with the Pot of Greed. That's going to go through, and we'll get to draw 2 more there. And we start with the Pot of Greed instead of the Graceful, in case we, like, drew into Serpent or something. Unfortunately, we didn't, but hopefully we'll draw into it off this Charity. And, oh, that heavy. That is a good card to draw when your opponent's got 4 back row set. I think since the tomatoes are a bit less useful here, we're going to discard both of them. They're not terrible, but we've got Spirit Reaper Singing and Witch in hand, so, I mean, honestly, there aren't too many targets left in deck. We're going to start with this Heavy Storm just to clear their back row away. They've got Solemn Judgment for that, which is quite unfortunate for us, but we do have this Nobleman of Crossout here to clear their back, or not their back row, but their set monster, and that actually works out for us. So they will banish the other guard from deck as well. We're going to bring out Lily. They've got to have something here or else they lose the game. And it looks like they do. They've got Book of Moon, so I'll set down the Lily. We'll set this Torrential Tribute, pass back to them, see what they do. They're going to Dark Hole our Lily away, set 1, pass back to us. And, I mean, I feel pretty good about this. We're just going to bring out a Witch, attack in for 1100. If they summon another monster, we've got a Torrential here. So they're just going to set another pass back to us. We could bring out, like, a Tomato or something just to threaten lethal, but I don't even think we need to do that, as we've got a 2-turn clock on them already. I mean, yeah, it looks like they didn't have Torrential anyways, so maybe we should have just done it, but I don't know. I feel very confident here. We've got Raigeki, we've got Torrential. I feel like we're in a very, very good spot. They've got the ring here. They're going to pop the Witch, and we'll search out a Jinzo just to shut off their potential plays next turn. They're just going to MST the set that we have here. Kind of an interesting play, I guess, maybe in case they were worried it was like a call. But, I mean, they could have just changed it to the call, so I don't quite know what they were going for there. But we're just going to set the Spirit Reaper pass back to them, because I don't think they have a way to clear this. If they do, then and they have a monster on top of that, then we're kind of in trouble. But if they don't, we can just tribute over it for Jinza next turn and wrap up the game that way. So they're just going to set 1 pass back to us, and we're just going to tribute over that Reaper for the Jinzo, and that should be the end of the game. And yeah, their back row will not do anything here, and they didn't have any monsters in graveyard to write a Spirit anyways, so that's just going to be the end of the game here. So, despite our major misplay in that game, we actually did manage to pull it out in the end. Again, I apologize for the loose technical play here. I'm still getting used to the format, and that's not really a good excuse to have, I know. But, I mean, the only thing I can do is promise that I will tighten up the technical play in the future. So, let's go into Game 3, and let's see if I can really pull this game around and not actually, you know, majorly mess up like I have the previous games. They're going to start with a Graceful Charity here, discarding a Spear Soldier and an MST. They're going to set 3 and then fire a Necro Valley here. And then they're going to go for Royal Tribute. Damn. Okay, so that will be really bad for us here. We will have to discard our hand, and we do get to show them the hand here off of Royal Tribute, which is very unfortunate, as this is a hand we would have liked to hide. But unfortunately for them, they've already set their back row into the heavy anyways, so it's not the worst. And also we can use this profitably with Mirage of Nightmare, hopefully. So I think this is all together okay. They do have Pot of Greed though, so that is really rough. I'm gonna go for Pot, set 1 more, pass back to us. That tells us that they do have a way to deal with this heavy. So what I'm actually going to do first is I'm going to fire a Nobleman of Crossout. This is to bait out something like IO or Solemn Judgment or something like that. Because if they do have like an IO, I want them to sort of have to bleed out for a couple turns with it. Because they can't let it die, or else we pop their other back row with heavy. So I'm going to go for the Nobleman first. They've got a Solemn Judgment for that, so that tells me that they don't have Imperial Order. So I'm fine just going for the heavy here, and it looks like that will indeed clear the rest of their back row, so I feel very good about that. We're going to go for a Pot of Greed and draw 2. Unfortunately, those aren't the best draws. We're just going to fire this Mirage of Nightmare, set a Torrential Tribute, pass back to our opponent. So now if they do kill more monsters to board, we do have the TT to pop their board. Standby phase, they will let the Mirage go through, so we draw 3 off that. And they've got Delinquent Duo, so this will force us to discard our entire hand next turn, potentially. They're going to hit this Tomato. We're just going to discard the Serpent. We drew off the Mirage. Pretty good card there. And they're going to go for a Gravekeeper's Spy. So this will let them get out a Gravekeeper's Spear Soldier, and we are just going to Torrential Tribute that. That's a lot of damage. So we're going to pop that. Just hope that they don't have like a Spirit Reaper or a Zalug in hand. But they're just going to set 1, pass back to us. We draw a Sangan. And in standby phase, we do have to consider whether we get back the Serpent here or not. I think we just do get it back because we can do Serpent like multiple times in the standby phase. So we do just get back the Serpent. They will send the Serpent. I mean, we tell them to pick randomly because it is random. Discard the Sangan. And, I mean, we really wanted the Sangan to stick around. But, yeah, we do lose the Jinzo as well. So we're going to grab back the Serpent now. And we're just going to go into main. I mean, they don't have any cards in hand, so no use activating the Forceful. We'll just draw 4 off the Mirage now. And unfortunately, we do not draw an MST again. That's what we're kind of desperately going for. But unfortunately, we have not drawn one yet. They're going to Terraforming for Necro Valley, flip up this guard to bring back the Serpent in hand. Honestly, I'm not complaining about that, as if they discard that off of Mirage, then that's pretty good. So they're just going to fire the Necro Valley now and attack in for 1,500. So, yeah, we take the 15, and we draw Io. Okay, we've got a couple good options here. So I'd really like to keep Io and Graceful in hand. If we don't lose those two, I feel like we're in a pretty good spot. But yeah, let's see what they hit out here. They are going to roll for it, and they'll hit the Delinquent Duo. So I'm fine with that. They've got no cards in hand. They hit the Confiscation. Again, I'm fine with that. They've got no cards in hand. So I'm feeling okay about this. And then they're going to hit the IO. Okay, as long as we get the Graceful back, we're still okay. There's one more card to hit. Okay, we do lose the Graceful. I mean, not terrible. Like, Snatch Steal can be used to go for damage. And that could actually win us the game if we draw a monster big enough to actually do that. So, I mean, it's not the worst. In standby, we will draw 4 off the Mirage here. And let's see what they do. They're going to set 1, pass back to us. And, yep, we draw our 5th, and we have to discard 4 here. Again, this isn't the worst for us. If we keep reinforcing the army in hand, I think we might just win the game, because we can Snatch Steal their Gravekeeper's Guard, you know, reinforcement for, like, Don Salug. That would be pretty good. I mean, if they've got MST, then they could stop that, but I don't think they have MST because they let the Mirage go through. But unclear. They're going to send the Mirror Force, which is kind of unfortunate, but like that. Send the Call. That is perfectly fine because we can't use it under Necro Valley. They're going to send the Tomato as well. And let's see what the last card they send is. It's the Reinforcement of the Army. Well, kind of unfortunate. We'll just set this Torrential Tribute, pass back to them. And then they are just going to Gearfried Break our Mirage of Nightmare in the draw phase to prevent us from drawing 4 off that. Quite unfortunate, but I mean, I feel like we got pretty deep into our deck with the Mirage. I mean, we lost some good cards, but I do think that we need to do that just to try and claw our way back. Oh, man. Where were you on all the previous turns? Ugh. Yeah, drawing the MST the turn after Mirage is gone is quite unfortunate. But we'll just set the Sinister Serpent, set the MST pass back to them. They're just going to hit the Serpent again. I mean, why not? They're just going to set another. We're just going to MST that in the end phase. Just because I feel like we're pretty close to actually getting lethal if we just draw into a couple of cards. And we do have a fair amount of cards in deck that do it. So we're just going to fire that just in case. It's a Mirror Force. Painful Choice, honestly, is a pretty good card here. We're going to fire the Painful. And I feel like we do have a fair amount of cards left in deck that might do it. So we're going to send a Yata, because if they give us Yata, we Snatch Steal their monster, summon Yata. We're getting in for 700 effectively every turn, and also they can't draw away out that, so that will win the game. We're going to send a Lily. Lily will also win the game because we got Snatch Steal. And then we're going to send Don Zalug, Ring of Destruction, and Tomato. Ring of Destruction will also win the game for us, as we can ring during their draw phase and pop the Gravekeeper's Guard after we hit him for 15. Zalug and Tomato don't quite win the game for us, but it does sort of get them into a situation where They have to like fade a draw, or yeah, I mean we basically have to hope that they don't draw something good in that one draw step. Um, and yeah, so I feel pretty good about these two, even though they're not quite game winning this turn. They are indeed going to give us the Zalug, which is smart. That's one of the two that doesn't do it for us here. So I think that's a good play on their part. We accidentally add the ring, but that should go to grave. And then in we're just going to set this Zalug and pass back to them. We could have just summoned it out, Snatch Shield their guard, and just gone in for big damage this turn. But then if they do draw like the MST to pop the Snatch Shield, that's kind of rough for us, and they will gain 1,000 from that. So it's not necessarily worth doing. I feel like we'll set the Zalug this turn. They can't get over it with guard, and so I feel okay about this. And then if they do have something here, we can torrential. So yeah, I feel like that's fine. They're just going to hit into our set with the guard. It is the Zalug. And then they're just going to set one pass back to us. And now, if that set is MST, then that would have shut down our Snatch Shield play, but we do have Change of Heart off the top. I did side this in, and that will indeed win us the game here. Their set was Dark Hole, so that wouldn't have mattered either way. If they Dark Hold, honestly, that wouldn't have made a difference either, because we could have just summoned out Serpent next turn, hit in for some chip damage. If they summoned a monster, we had Torrential, and also we could potentially just Snatch Steal whatever they brought out as well. So I feel like this was kind of a losing game for them either way. But yeah, we're just going to bring up the Serpent, fire Change of Heart on the guard. If they do have IO to stop the change, then they lose the attack buff off of the Necro Valley, so we could switch Zalug to attack, hit over the guard. So yeah, I feel like this is pretty good here. And we're just going to attack in for lethal damage. So very intense game in game 3 here. And it was very neat. I mean, the Mirage was very interesting. It drew us very deep into our deck. Very cool card. If we had drawn an out to it, then that would potentially have made us win the game a lot sooner. But I do think that drawing that deep into our deck was pretty good overall, even if we didn't get to take full advantage of it. So, I mean, I think these games were sick and really showed off what a hand control deck can do. I mean, yes, we were facing maybe not the best deck in the world. Like Gravekeepers, I think is probably like at best tier 2. I mean, I don't know. I haven't experimented with the deck, and I'll have to, sort of test it out a bit. But yeah, I mean, that'll sort of come in future videos of more testing with these things. Again, I definitely made some very iffy plays here, and, I need to work on tightening up my technical play in this format. But if you want more examples of that, then let's dive into the other games that I played, because, oh boy, I make some major misplays there as well. So let's dive into those. But first, let's show off the deck that I'm going to be using in those games. So while hand control is like generally considered to be the best deck in the format, there have been other decks that have topped, mainly Alfia 2's Gearfried deck here. And Gearfried is very similar to how it was in Fiber. Basically, it works with using Gearfried with Blast of Chains to pop your opponent's cards, and that can be very, very strong. And then if you've also got the Don Zalugs to get in for some hand rips after you pop cards, then you're depriving your opponent of a lot of resources. Also, reinforcing the army can be used to get the Zalugs, the Gearfrieds, or the Exiled. And also, we are playing a Zambara the Dark in here as well. So I think that this card is a pretty cool thing to base strategy around, and I think it's a pretty sick deck. So let's just go through the card by card quickly. Again, just like I mentioned in the section on the hand control deck, there are some changes that I would make to this deck. I think honestly here there's some more major changes that I would make, but again, I haven't really played this format as much, so Alfia 2 could definitely sort of know some things that I don't and have better reasons for playing these. So let's start at the top. Again, they're the Zalugs, the Exiled Force, and triple Gearfried, the Iron Knight. There's also a Zambara here. Now, I'm not the biggest fan of Zambara in this format. Honestly, if I was to change this deck a bit, I'd probably change this into a Sasuke Samurai, as it's a search off of Reinforce the Army. It pops your opponent's sets. It is kind of fragile, but, I mean, I don't know. I feel like it might come up in more cases than Zambara would. Like, there aren't really anything that Zambara can get over. I mean, I guess Gemini Elf, sure, but, like, you're playing triple Blast with Chain anyways, and you're playing triple Gemini Elf as well, so I don't know. I could definitely see it coming up. If you're more afraid of the aggressive pressure from Gemini Elves and things, then there's definitely a card to use. But I don't know. I'm not as big a fan. Maybe I'll be sold on it after playing these games. But we've got triple Gemini Elf as well. A Lily and a Witch. No Fiber Jar in main. Very interesting to see. Also no Sangan or Tomatoes in main as well. So very different sort of deck philosophy than a hand control style deck. Anyways, for these spells, we've got Confiscation, Darkhold, Duo, Fisher. Very interesting card, but not bad. Graceful Charity, a Harpy's Feather Duster, Mirage of Nightmare, Monster Reborn, Triple MST, Nobleman of Crossout, Pot of Greed, Raigeki, Devil Reinforcement in the Army, Snatch Deal, and a Forceful Sentry. For the traps, we've got Triple Blast with Shade, Call of the Haunted, Imperial Order. Magic Drain is honestly the card that I take the most issue with in this deck. Like, I am not a fan of this card. I think it's just, your opponent can just play around it way too easily, just discarding a spell, and then you've just wasted a card. And Ace is 1-for-1 removal with that spell. But if your opponent does make that choice, then they're going to pick the choice that's better for them. So I'm really not a fan of this card, but, maybe they know something that I don't, and it actually has come up for them. But Mirror Force is in here as well. Mirror Wall, which is a very interesting trap card, and it's a very interesting battle trap. So I'm curious to see if we actually get to show this off. And a Ring of Destruction to finish it off. For the side deck, we've got 2 Electric Snake for hand control, most likely. Triple Gravekeepers Spy. Now, this is a good monster to wall up against, decks that can't really deal with it. We've got a Jinzo. We've got Triple King Tiger Wanghu for decks that, are more recruiter focused. This can be very strong. We also got a Book of Moon, a Change of Heart, a Fisher, Heavy Storm, Nobleman of Crossout, and Dust Tornado. So, again, I think this is a good place to start if you want to look into a Gearfried style deck. I'll probably put my own spin on this in the future. But, you can't go wrong with a tournament winning list. And so let's dive into some games and see how it actually does for us. Okay, we've got a game against PJ Darkness, a frequent guest on the channel. Always a pleasure to have them on. And unfortunately, we do lose the rock, paper, scissors, so we will be going second here. I mean, this deck is aggressive, so going second isn't the worst thing in the world, but yeah, this would have been good for going first hand with that Confiscation. Unfortunately, as is, we will not be able to do that. They're just going to set 2, pass back to us, and we draw. And this is maybe a point where I make a mistake. So I start with the Exiled Force and pop their monster before going for the Confiscation. I think maybe I should Confeed first just to see what they had. But I sort of wanted them to potentially, like, I don't know what I wanted them to do. So yeah, we're just going to go for the Comfy. That was, like, because that wouldn't actually bait out anything with the Exiled Force because Torrential would result in the same result. So, I don't know. I probably should have just gone for the Comfy first. And, yeah, but we're going to fire this Comfy and see their hand. And we see that they've got a Spirit Reaper here, which, could get in and discard a hand or a card from our hand next turn. So I think that's probably what we want to take. Although Lily is a bit of a risk as that does drop us pretty low. So yeah, maybe if I had seen this hand, I might have done things differently, but honestly, I'm not sure what would have been the thing to change here. As Gemini Elf could get over, like, whatever monster we had, so yeah. I think I might make a bit of a misplay here, too, where I take the Reaper. I'm sort of focused in on the hand control aspect, but given that we're at 7,000, we don't have a way to actually deal with Lily, and also they've got a Raigeki Break to protect the Lily further. I think, honestly, I probably should have taken the Lily, as it's a bit more of a threat at this point. But, I mean, the Reaper over 2 turns represents 2 hand rips because they can Raigeki Break whatever monster we bring out. We don't have a way to deal with that, so yeah. We're going to send Nobleman of Crossout in the main phase and they MST it. That's why we set Nobleman, just to be bait for that. It could have backfired on us easily because we were planning on harpying their Raigeki Break. And, if we had set the Nobleman, they didn't actually pop it, and we'd gone for the Harpies, they could have potentially popped the Nobleman. But they would have had to waste a card from hand there, so I don't know. I think it's not the worst. They're going to hit in with the Lily for 3,500, or 3,400, dropping us down to 3,600. They're going to set 1, pass back to us. We're just going to fire the Harpies now. That will clear the break, which we're very happy about. We're going to set a Gearfried here, pass back to them. And now, they can hit over the Gearfried with the Lily, but if they do that, they're going to have to pay 2,000. So I'm not the, most upset about that trade. They're just going to set 1, pass back to us. We draw Imperial Order, which is pretty good. We're going to set that, pass back to them. And I'm feeling okay about this. They're going to Harpies. We've got the Io. They're going to set 1, pass back to us. We draw Blast with Chain, which is a really good card to draw here. We're going to flip up that Gearfried here, hit in to their set. It's a Magician of Faith, so they'll grab back a Harpies. Honestly doesn't bother us because we've got this IO here. We're going to set Blast with Chain, pass back to them. Blast with Chain can be used to pop their Lily. And now we both kind of make a mistake here. They fire a Book of Moon targeting the Gearfried. This would normally shut off the Blast with Chain. And neither of us actually catch this in the moment, but since IO is up, they can't actually do this. So yeah, we realize it now in main 2. So we sort of just, rectify the game state. I asked them if they want to, bring the book back, but they decide not to. Um, so, I respect that. This is a way to keep yourself from making these mistakes in the future if you like make sure that you aren't actually benefiting from them in any way. So yeah, but we got to decide whether to keep the IO up, and I think that we do, as like we do just lose if our opponent like has Raigeki and stuff. So yeah, I'm just going to keep the IO up as long as possible. They search out a Jinzo, which is kind of unfortunate given that they've got a tomato in hand and can likely bring out a monster that Jinzo can distribute over. They're going to set 2 pass back to us. We draw another Mystical Space Typhoon, and now we have to actually consider whether we want to pay for the IO or not. And my reasoning of this is they're going to likely bring out Jinzo next turn anyways and shut off the IO. So is it worth paying the 700 now for something that doesn't necessarily affect us? Or is it just, I mean, if they've got Tomato set, they can likely bring out a monster. They don't have a Witch or a Spirit Reaper left in deck, but they likely have Sangans and Tomatoes. So we have 3 monsters to bring out to hit over them. But, I mean, it is a very big risk. We are just going to eventually go for it and just keep it on field because we figure there are basically a couple cases. If they've got a monster tribute over for Jinzo anyways, we likely probably lose the duel if they've got like a, board clear or powerful spell or something. But if they don't, then we're fine either way, and Imperial Lord will shut off a board clear that could potentially get them back into the game. So I feel like this is okay. And yeah, we're just going to go for it. We hit over what is indeed their tomato. They're going to bring out another tomato. We're going to hit in with our Gearfried here, dropping them down by 400 more. They're going to bring out a Sangam, which tells me that they might not have a 3rd tomato left in deck. Or they might just not be playing the 3rd tomato. So we're going to hit over that Sangam there, drop them down by 900. They search out a Fiber Jar here, which is pretty good. And we'll just pass back to them. They're going to set the Fiber Jar, set another here, pass back to us. We draw Reinforcing the Army, and I feel very good about this. We're going to let the IO drop, and we're going to just MST both of their back row here, and that will go through. We're going to fire the Reinforcing the Army there, and search out Zambira, because we don't actually have an Exiled Force left in deck. So, yeah, I mean, I probably should have saved the Reinforcement, given that we don't have the Exiled Force left in deck, but I honestly forgot that we had used it already. And if, this is what I was talking about in deck breakdown. If the Zambira was like Sasuke Samurai, that would have been a lot better in this case. But I guess Zambira is better in cases where you're losing, and Sasuke is better in cases where you're winning. So, yeah. I mean, I ultimately don't think the firing the Reinforcement there was too much of a misplay. However, I do think my next move was a misplay, because I do know that they've searched out the Fiber Jar off the Sangan, and yet I still summon out this Zambira, which I think does cost me the game here. Because in the moment, I just forgot that they had Fiber Jar, and that is not something you want to forget. So that will shuffle everything back into the deck. And we're at very low life points, so if they just have a monster to bring out and hit in with, we basically lose the game. There are some cards in our deck that can stop that from happening, but it makes it a lot riskier than it otherwise would be. So if we had the chance to actually, normal summon or set a monster after this big shuffle, then yeah, I think that we would have been in a much better spot, and we might have actually been able to win this game. But unfortunately, as you'll see here, it doesn't quite work out that way. So we draw a hand of a lot of traps anyways, but this Witch could have actually bought us some time. If we had set that, or if we had just summoned it and potentially used Blasphemous Chain as a sort of battle trick, then this would have been a lot better for us. But as is, we can't do anything with that Witch, so our only real defense is this Ring of Destruction here. We do have Magic Drain as well to stop any powerful spells that they may have, but we're in a very, very tough situation. So in order just to see if we would have lost if we had brought out the Witch either way, let's just see what their hand is here. And honestly, this is a pretty insane hand. So yeah, I'm not sure there was much we could really do here. I mean, it really does depend on what they get off the pot as well, but they're going to go for a painful choice here, and we're just going to let that go through. We could have potentially Magic Drained that, but like, we probably want to Magic Drain whatever they bring out next, or, I mean, I don't know. We can at least manage what they do with the Magic Drain. So they send a bunch of cards off painful. We're going to give them the Yata, I think. No, we give them the IO. I think we honestly should have given them the Yata, just to bait them into doing something with that, but I guess IO also is something that they can't use this turn, so it's not the worst thing in the world. But they're going to go for a Pot of Greed here. We've got the Magic Drain. They will just discard this Mirage here, draw 2, and yeah, they have Raigeki anyways, so we would have lost this either way, because they would have just Raigeki or Witch, and that would have been the end of the game. But we would have been a lot more in it if they hadn't done that. And MST on the ring is, yeah, it's very unfortunate. I mean, that likely wouldn't have helped us here anyways, because if they bring out something like Gemini Elf, that is too much attack for us to actually ring while surviving. So, and, there could have been potentially a neat play here where we equip Blast with Chain to their monster, but unfortunately, this can only be equipped to our monster. So, kind of unfortunate. If we had Witch and Attack, maybe they wouldn't have Raigeki'd, but they probably would have, just because, they know we're on Blast with Chains, and so, yeah, I mean, yeah, this is kind of an iffy sort of hypothetical thing, like, would they have played differently if we had set a monster or summoned a monster, but yeah, I think that we were losing this game either way. So that's going to be the end of the game, and I think that does show, like, some of my issues with some cards in the deck. I think the Magic Drain is, I mean, I really don't like Magic Drain. I'm not a fan of Magic Drain. I get how it can have some uses occasionally, but I think in general, it's just like, yeah, it's my least favorite counter trap that sees play. So, yeah, we're gonna go into game 2. I think I do side out the or maybe I don't side out anything. I might just want to like try it again just to see how it goes, but I should really keep notes on what I'm siding out or in. But this is a pretty good opener here, and we're going to set the ring, set an MST, pass back to our opponent. They're going to fire a painful choice here, and that's fine by us. They're going to send Comfy, Painful, MST, Heavy, and MST. We're just going to give them the MST there, figuring that, they might have a duo in hand, given that they didn't actually send the duo. They could have also sided out the duo, so that's something to keep in mind, but I feel like MST, we get 2 sets, so yeah. They're going to bring out a Yata, and we could potentially ring this. And I think in hindsight, maybe I should have. But looking at our hand, we figure we've got ways to deal with the Yata, because we can reinforcement out like a Donsalug, attack in. They can't necessarily clear that with Yata, and we've got Ring to deal with whatever monster they bring out to get over the Donsalug. So I think maybe I should have just, ringed it, but I feel like we can deal with this, so I don't. And maybe this is a bit greedy. They're going to set 2, pass back to us. And we don't draw here, but we do have reinforcement in the army. They do have an Imperial Order, so we're just going to MST that IO there. And we'll get a search from deck. We're going to grab a Donsalug here. We're going to bring it out, hit in directly for 1,400. And then we get to discard a card from their hand. We're going to pick that one. And it's a Sangan, honestly, a pretty good card to hit. We're going to pass back to them. Unfortunately, they do have an MST here, so now if they do have a monster that can clear the Zalug, we're in a bad spot. They do have Raigeki, though, so that will also clear the Zalug, so kind of unfortunate. They're going to set 1, pass back to us. We do have this reinforcement in the army, though, to grab another Zalug, so that's pretty good. And we could potentially set this, but I think I do just want to attack and try and get in here for some more damage. They've got Ring, though, and that will pop the Zalug here. Quite unfortunate. I do Monster Reborn the Zalug because I don't want to get Yata locked again. Honestly, I think I should have just saved the Monster Reborn for next turn, because then, we sort of have another shot at discarding their Yata in hand. But I am getting a little bit desperate here. So yeah, I Reborn the Zalug, figuring that they need to bring out a monster to hit over this. So yeah, I mean, I think maybe this was a bit of a misplay. But they're going to summon out this Gemini Elf here, hit into the Zalug, set 1, pass back to us. We draw a Blast with Chain, which won't quite do anything for us here. Pass back to them, and they're going to actually tribute over that Gemini Elf for a Jinzo. And this is part of why we didn't Dark Hole. We wanted to bluff that we actually did have something here that, would be bad for their Yata. And it looks like that bluff worked. We can now Dark Hole their Jinzo and feel pretty good about that. We're going to Dark Hole the Jinzo indeed, summon out this King Tiger Wanghu. They're going to Raigeki break our King Tiger and pop that. And that will be the end of the game, as this Blathless Chain does not deal with the Yata. So quite unfortunate. I think maybe if I had played the Reborn on the Zalug a bit differently, they would have probably been 1 card lower in hand, and maybe that would have, not given them enough resources to actually do the Raigeki break thing and win the game. But, that's how it happens sometimes, and if I hadn't gotten greedy in the beginning with the Yata, we might not have been in this situation at all. So I think there were a couple things I should have done differently here. But, that's Yu-Gi-Oh! And that's, testing out a deck and a format for the first time. can be a bit tricky. And I think that these sorts of ideas can definitely be something that you develop over time after playing a format for quite a bit. So I think that, if Alafia 2 was piloting this deck, maybe they could have won these games instead. There's definitely still a lot of work that I need to do on, sort of tightening up my technical play in this format. But that's why I consider this video like a good first example of a first foray into a new format. Because I feel like a lot of the time people see YouTubers like playing decks and just, winning games like all the time and, doing these big brain plays. And, that definitely is a state that a lot of people can get to. And I think that, in formats that I've practiced in, I think that I can also sort of attain that level. But also, I think it's good to acknowledge that, like, people don't start out that way. People get that way after playing a lot of games in these formats. And so, don't be discouraged if you start playing the games and you sort of don't see these big brain lines, see these sorts of optimal plays, because, Yu-Gi-Oh! Is a game about improving. The more you play, the more you improve, the more you see things that you should do in the future. And so this is, I hope, an encouraging message to any of you out there who are sort of nervous about trying these new formats. Just, jump in and try it out. You will make mistakes. I made mistakes here, but hopefully you'll learn from those mistakes and get better in the future. But let me know what you thought of these games down in the comments below. And let me know what you thought of these decks. Do you think that, this really is just a skill issue on my part, and that if I was more skilled with these, then I could have easily won these games? Or do you think that, things like Gearfried maybe are just like a fluke that they won? Let me know down in the comments below. I look forward to discussing with you as always. And until next time, I've been Ben from YGO from Zero, and I'm signing off.